This is the story of Uncas, the controversial 17th century sachem of the Mohegan Tribe in Connecticut. His life has become legend, passed down through 13 generations. It is a complex legacy, mingling fact and fiction. According to Mohegan oral tradition, the people are the story. Telling this story are the descendants of Uncas, the English and neighboring tribes, American Indian scholars and activists, and the residents of Uncasville, the village that bears his name.
I'd like to tell you a story of a great warrior who lived in the time of our ancestors. This warrior's wisdom, courage, and vision saved the Mohegan people from total annihilation. This great warrior, who became our first sachem, is known as Uncas.
In his time, in the early 1600s, he was the major player in America.
All nations and cultures do produce outstanding men from time to time. Perhaps the British saw in him somebody who was outstanding, with whom they could, as it were, do business.
Talk about name, Mundo. Mundo we go.
He cared for his people. He cared for the colonists, too. He also was shrewd and cunning.
Uncas was a greedy individual that wanted power, and he sold his soul to the colonists.
He coped with people whose intent was truly black and black-hearted, and he won.
In 1826, James Fenimore Cooper's novel, The Last of the Mohicans, introduced a fictional Uncas to the world.
In many ways, it's the first American adventure novel, the first American popular novel, and the first novel that features Native Americans as main characters. It became probably the icon by which all Native Americans were drawn for generations after that, because we have those two images in the characters of, on the one side, Uncas and Chingachgook, who are the noble Mohegans, and on the other side, Makwa, who is the despicable, lying, dangerous redskin, who is the villain of the piece. And they're names that were picked out of the popular imagination. But Uncas, of course, was a historical character, the leader of the Mohegan people, who became the primary ally of the English and was a sort of exemplar of the relationship between the white man and the Indian. In the popular imagination, he was the good Indian. So when Cooper wrote this book, it's not surprising that the Uncas character should be used in name, if not an actual person, because of course the fictional Uncas is totally different. So you have this picture of Uncas as being absolutely steadfast. He is sort of the image of Tonto. He's the first Tonto in the Lone Ranger. And this image of the white man with a faithful Indian by his side continues on down through movies and television, right to the present day. It's one of the most popular images in the American imagination, even though, beginning with Uncas himself, it is a false image.
Fiction met reality when publicity for the 1920 version of The Last of the Mohicans discovered real Mohicans in Connecticut. The Mohegan Tribe has lived in the area now encompassing Montville, Connecticut for centuries. In and around Montville and its village of Uncasville, the name Uncas is ubiquitous. Used by numerous public and private institutions, businesses small and large, and even residences. When Cooper used the name of Uncas for his fictionalized character, he created an unprecedented international literary phenomenon. More than 12 movie versions of The Last of the Mohicans have left an enduring mark on American culture. Roberta Cooney still recalls her hometown's 1936 premiere.
I was a young girl when I went to see this movie. And it was quite something to go to a movie, because we didn't go to the movies that often. And before we went, my mother told us that it was not all true. It was a movie. It did make a lasting impression on me.
Carlton Eichelberg also went with his family to see the 1936 version.
I remember going down on a Saturday morning with my mother and my step-grandmother, and you know, as a young boy at that time, I think everybody was interested in cowboys and Indians, so to speak. It was basically fiction, but it did take and put our most famous leader into a national limelight, and it made the Mohegan people more world-renowned.
To me, it was a fictional story. Didn't have any import to me other than that James Fenimore Cooper was an obvious racist.
American Indian activist and actor Russell Means played the fictional Uncas's father in the 1992 hit film version. Means first read Cooper's story in the 2nd grade.
After 3 auditions, I won the role. Dennis Banks and I were competing for the role. I won, and did that awesome movie. Well, the characterization of Uncas was not developed. He was two-dimensional. He did fall in love, supposedly, but that was the only humanity he was allowed to have in the movie. So to try to compare him to the historical Uncas is impossible. You know, because the whole movie's concept, The Last of the Mohicans, is an absolute fabrication. He wasn't one of the last, you know.
Welcome him and let him take his place at the council fire of my people. He is Uncas, my son. Tell them to be patient and ask death for speed, for they are all there but one. I, Chingachgook, last of the Mohicans.
Who are the real Mohegans? Who is the real Uncas? The historic Uncas is in fact the first of the Mohegans. Tribal medicine woman Gladys Tantaquidgeon learned the story of her ancestors from the elders of her youth.
I must confess I never read Cooper's Last of the Mohicans. It's historical fiction, of course.